Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is for you. This is the Backdrop CMS user group meeting on organic groups, being recorded on the 17th of August, unless you're in Australia or Asia, in which case it'll be the 18th of August. My name is Martin Price. I'm a Backdrop developer in Northeast England, United Kingdom, and we'll pass the introductions on to Olaf.
I'm Olaf from Hamburg. I'm a Backdrop site architect and working a lot with Backdrop, and amongst the others, I also built a site with organic groups. Let's go to Robert.
Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet from Altadena, California. I work on occasional core issue and contribute.
Robert, you got muted yourself. Mid-introduction. Mid-introduction.
Oh, I just did the introduction. And I passed it to Arena.
Well, I think there's a lag somewhere. I don't know if it's me or is anybody else noticing a weird lag?
Yes.
Is it? All right. Well, let me know if you think it's me that's the problem. I didn't hear who you asked to go next, Robert. I'm going to just jump in because I'm talking. I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim on the internet. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota. Again, let me know if there's an internet connection that's causing my connection to lag. Yeah, excited to talk about organic groups today. And Irina, are you available to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am. I disabled video just in case the light is coming from here. My name is Irina Zaks. I work with various CMS systems. Backdrop was the best solution for migrating off Drupal 7, and one of our major sites is based off organic groups. And I want to say thank you to everyone who ported the module and joined discussion today to explain how to use it and how to possibly migrate it or not migrate it. Thank you.
Izzy, are you available to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm from Vancouver, Canada. I've been using Drupal for 15 years, and I've done quite a bit of stuff with organic groups on Drupal 7 and before that. And I've been watching the developments of Backdrop, and I think it's ready for prime time now that organic groups is up and running, but I haven't yet got my feet wet. So I thought I'd sit in and see what I can learn. Thanks.
Sure. So I think that's everyone. So we don't, I don't know that anybody's prepared a structured presentation today, but I do have a demo site spun up that I can share my screen with. I don't know if anybody else has a live organic group site that they're prepared to demonstrate. I might be kind of looking at you, Olaf. Do you?
Yes, a bit. Yes.
You have something you can share? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just have to decide where to start. Let's just say maybe a quick background on the organic groups module. This only got officially released as a Backdrop port in April. I think according to our stats, there's still only about 18 sites using it, but it's growing pretty quickly. I know that a number of people, including Irina and Olaf, were waiting eagerly for it and helped push it across the finish line. One of our own internal infrastructure sites, the localization site that we use for Backdrop relied on the organic groups module. So we were using Drupal 7 until fairly recently, until we got organic groups. So now we were able to port that site to Backdrop because of organic groups availability. Anybody else want to just sort of give so again, I have a demo site spun up that we can look at if we need to. But if it makes sense to go another direction, I'd like to jump right into what you've got, Olaf, that's okay as well. Olaf, do you want to talk briefly, just give us a quick summary of what the organic group module does? Is that okay?
I can try. So there were some items mentioned on the website, and I can go through them quickly. So with the module, you can obviously create groups, and in the groups consist of first group members and also members of different roles and permissions and so on, and of groups and of group content. So if you have organic groups, you can create various groups. So let's say you are in a school and you have different working groups. So every working group can have its own web page and group. Then, okay, I see the screen now. Then you can also define group content, for example, events. So event content type could be group content or a blog content type, and so on. Then the groups can be private or public. So if they're private, only the group members can see the content and post content in it. And if but it can also be public. So, and I can show an example for it later. Yeah, and then you can also have group discussions, for example, very simple, using the comment function. So you have, for example, a blog content type, write some blog posts, and people can respond to it. So that's at a quick overview. If you want to add something, feel free to it.
Would it, Olaf, do you think looking at a sort of empty site would be a better place to start before we look at your site, or?
Well, on my sites, I can show it more superficially. I don't want to go in the back end. So if we want to show the administration of the groups, it would be better with your site, with the demo site.
Sure.
So I don't know. It's either way.
I don't have any active sites using organic groups, but I did help with the demo content submodule for organic groups when we released it. Mm-hmm. And I was refreshing my memory a little bit in the last hour, because organic groups, we specifically included a demo content. So when you go to install,
wait a minute. We could also ask quickly the others what is of most interest.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So it's a good point. Let us know. I'll just finish what I was saying, though, that we have this demo groups, organic groups example, and you have an option when you, if you haven't used organic groups and you're playing with it, I highly recommend turning on that module. Basically, real quickly, what that module does is it gives you some sample groups with just some sort of random sample content to help you play with. The module is very unintuitive. If you don't do this, it's kind of hard to figure some things out. And the first time, once you've got it figured out, it's not bad. But this will help you.
Yeah.
It's a good question. Well, it sounds like everybody here, and we have to remember we're also, some people will be watching this later. So everybody here has some organic groups experience, actually, I think. It sounds like, so we don't have any complete beginners, but I don't know. It still might be worth just quickly going through the structure, Olaf, just because it's for those who haven't, that will be watching the video.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
But please, I'll try to do this real quickly and then ask us questions because we should focus or, jump in with questions, use chat or just interrupt me. I'm going to share my screen again and I'll try to do this. Fairly quickly. The big thing with organic groups is that you have to create two content types. A content type for groups and then a content type for group content. You don't have to name them this way, but this is the way we did it in the sample module. I have some sample content here, which is cluttering things up from my testing. But for example, we set up 3 groups with a content type called group, and then we set up 3 nodes. And each node is an individual group. So theme developers, documentation, and core development. And then we also have a content type called group content. And then any particular node, if we go to edit this, can be assigned to any of the available groups that you've created. That's kind of the really big thing. I'll show you. If we go to, if I go to a specific group, there's this group tab, which gives you the ability to add a group member, manage existing members, and also view only. And I got tripped up by this today when I was looking at this, is I thought I should be able to edit my permissions here. And you can't edit them on this page. That's why it says read only. But you can view how the permissions are configured. I'll go back to, and also roles. You can create different sets of roles for different groups. Where you actually manage the permissions and roles is under configuration organic groups. And there's permissions overview. And again, you can have you could create different content types for different types of groups, and then give each different type of group different permissions and different roles. And here's where I would actually edit those. I don't know. I think that's a real high level overview. There's other settings in here you can play through. I don't want to get too detailed unless people have questions. Roles, membership, field settings. I can show you an example of this is the same site logged in as a regular user. So as a regular user, I set it up so that the core developer, the default content are sort of set up as the core developer or whatever group is private. So when I'm logged in as a regular member, not an admin, I can only see these 2 groups. When I click on them, this is by default. There's, obviously you can configure this differently. I can see the title of the nodes, but I can't actually see the content because I'm not a member of the group. But I can subscribe to the group. And this, because I was playing around in this might be a bug that I need to report, but this had to do with the fact that I was switching things around. I think if I go to the documentation group, there we go. I had already joined. I can unsubscribe from and now I don't have access to the content, and then I can subscribe to it. You do have the ability to require approval, so you can request subscription in a group if you want to make that so that they're not anybody can just join automatically. But you'll see once I've joined, then I see something different than when I wasn't joined. Anyways, I think that's on a high level. Do people have any general questions about organic groups?
One question, I think, interesting also for experienced organic groups users is how it differs from Drupal 7, or if it differs at all, the backdrop version, and how you can upgrade, or if you can upgrade. And I can give some input to it. I remember, one
I'll just mention, there is quite a bit of documentation on in GitHub on the wiki page,
Yeah. Okay.
but go ahead.
Yeah, I think one interesting difference is that in Drupal 7, organic groups made use of panels, as far as I remember. And so you had a lot of panel panes for various views. And in Backdrop, we work mostly with blocks. And so a lot of views were replaced. So panels were replaced by blocks, and you can arrange them with the on the layout block management pages. Then the other topic, upgrade, is possible. So I actually, the site which I can show you in a minute was upgraded from Drupal 7, and with a lot of groups, and that worked really fine. So that's possible with a normal upgrade path. So you don't have to migrate the content, but can just upgrade.
Yes, and just I've never done this, but there is a page on the wiki. So for all Backdrop contrib modules on their GitHub page have a wiki page. Most of the wiki pages aren't used. I've been trying to get them started for more modules, but some of them are using them quite effectively. And fortunately, our organic groups module has a bunch of good documentation here, and it does. You can this from the regular backdrop.org project page. If you click on the documentation link, it takes you here, so you don't have to know there.
Great.
But yeah, I believe that a fair amount of work went into that upgrade, so you should be able to upgrade. But we obviously could use some testers.
On the subject of upgrading, are we kind of looking at needing to do something like a views data export and then using feeds to bring that in for flexibility, or are we talking about using the migrate, another migrate process?
Irina, do you want to talk about that?
I am not expert on the subject, but I really hope to become one in the next couple of months.
Okay.
So in terms of overall migration, the whole big idea behind Backdrop migration is that you set up brand new Backdrop site, you add all the modules that you need. There's a module that is almost ready to go, D2B migrate, which will automatically pull modules that you need if they're available in Backdrop repository. And then you import database either through backup and migrate or directly in the database, whatever tool set you're using. And then you click button upgrade. And so everything should be converted. And that is, you know, there was the dream that was described, oh, wouldn't it be great if that is how Drupal upgrades would work? And it does work for me on reasonably configured sites. It does not work on super custom modules, and it doesn't work on sites with bad architecture, because if site has bad architecture, you will inherit this bad architecture. So you want to start with good, clean site that works well for you. So that's the ideal scenario. I am happy to drop the link to the D2B module or to the articles about actual migration, or that was a question from Easy, right?
Yeah.
If you want to schedule time to do demo for Vancouver user group, I'd be more than happy to do just the real live demo. But specifically for organic groups, that's something that I would love to test myself. And so if we're doing the demo, I would like to invite everyone. And I will be asking lots of questions as well, specifically related to organic groups.
Excellent.
Is if you haven't done this before, I mean, basically, conceptually, an upgrade from Drupal 7 to Backdrop should work the same way a Drupal 6 to Drupal 7 upgrade worked, where you kind of replace the database and do an up and just run the upgrade process, and it upgrades your database. You can also do a migration and migrate your data if you prefer, but the upgrade process is meant to be simple. And a lot of the modules that have been ported have upgrade paths, so that it will, upgrade whatever changes you need for the organic groups module. My guess is that there's only been a few people who've actually done this upgrade. So if you do try to do an upgrade, especially with organic groups, and you run into some glitches and you report those in the issue queue, I think there's oftentimes we can get those fixed pretty quick, and we would like to catch bugs and improve that, but you should be able to do just a direct upgrade.
Wow, that sounds almost like magic.
It
That
is.
is the plan. That is the plan. Yep.
It doesn't it doesn't work in every situation, and depending on how complex your site is, there will be glitches you will run into, and that's where use the Backdrop forum or use our Zulip chat, because we do spend a lot of time helping each other with whatever glitches come up in that upgrade process.
Izzy, I posted the link to the upgrade documentation in the chat. So, and that should work with organic groups. I did it.
And and I'll just repeat, we have a forum site if you haven't found it yet, and that it's not, there's activity in it almost every day, and usually people are pretty responsive to questions posted there. And it's also it's archived, right? So it helps future users. But we also do have a chat channel in Zulip if you ask us about that, if you're not aware of it. Okay. Any other questions about who can I pin people down? Who's actually used the module before, or specifically in Drupal 7 or Backdrop? We know Izzy has, and we know Olaf has, and I have. I mean, I've never used it in a live site, but I have played with it quite a bit. Laren, Martin, Robert, have you guys used it?
I've done a little bit of playing with it, but not in a live site yet.
I've not used it.
Okay. And Laren just put in chat that he's minimally used it a long time ago, so not recently. I found a few quirky things while playing with the demo content in it. For example, and this goes to the point, one of the points that Olaf was making. I'll share my screen again. One of the, well, there were some quirky things with permissions, for example, that I had to play with. But the main thing I was thinking about is that I have to do this other site, this subscribe link. This is a block, and Olaf was referring to the fact that in Drupal 7 it used panels, and in Backdrop a lot of this stuff is done with blocks. Well, this block is not enabled or set up in our sample content module. So when you came to a page, even if you had permission to join a group, there was no link already there to do it. So I had to just add the subscribe. Izzy in particular, if you're new to Backdrop, one of the really big things it takes to get used to is the layout system in Backdrop. This is really important. It's really nice once you get used to it, but it's a little bit confusing at the beginning. But anyways, we have a special layout that we're using, and I just had to drop the membership links block onto that page, and then that showed up. Little things like that. There's also quirky stuff like, how this displays if you're not actually a member, that you'll have to tweak and play with a bit to get right. But any other questions? Olaf, do you want to give us your case study?
Yes, I can. Let me share my screen.
No.
So,
Irina, you mentioned that using it intensely and noting that the UI could use some improvement. I don't want to make grand claims, but as we ported it, I think Alejandro did a lot of work on the module, and Olaf did a lot of testing and gave and some other people did, and we tried to make the UI a little bit better. I think it's we added a little bit more help text to the backdrop version than existed in the Drupal version, but the UI is difficult to use, and I think we tried to make it a little bit better, and more suggestions would be welcome. I'll shut up.
I will be filing issues and assigning them to myself.
Okay,
And once I can't work with it, I will ask for help.
sure.
okay, so yeah, I could share experience or yeah, how it looked like on 2 or 3 different sites. The first is of the GEW. It's a teachers union in Hamburg, and they have unfortunately for you, it's a German site, so it's not bilingual. So I have to explain what all that means here. And mitmachen means, yeah, what does it mean? Take part. And here you have a lot, a menu, or here also a menu of groups. So these are, for example, these are working groups. And so they have a lot of groups, and I can show you how a group page looks like. So for example, you have here one, that's a group about literature for young people and media for young people. And so they have a group description. Here also some more content about their working topics and so on. And then they have here the group posts and various ones. So for example, normal blog posts, then events, and so on. And then they have also contact persons, links, other groups have downloads, and so on. And as a member, you can edit the description of the group, and then you can also post all the content. So you write a blog post for this group, and then it's just only in this group and not in the other groups. For example, with another group, and they have different content. So each group is able to present themselves. Yeah, and I think that's already it for this page. So they, as you saw, maybe they have a lot of groups. All these here are subgroups. Here are other subgroups, and so on. And the same organization has, or I should say had, because that is a Drupal 7 site which they don't use anymore, but it still exists, a private group site. And yeah, that was built in Drupal 7, but with the same organic groups module, and would be also upgradable to Backdrop, but they decided now that they didn't need it anymore. But I can show you it as another use case. So I can't see any content on that site before I log in. So I do that now. And here I'm a test member now with 2 test groups. And just to show you, so here are all groups, so my groups and all the other ones. And so if I go to my group again, here on the homepage of the group, I have a lot of a river of content, or how you name it. So just all the content of the group, sorted by date. And then I have a lot of, or I have some very different content types, let's say. So projects, you can also filter them by status, blog posts, Termine, that's events, so I can filter them. Let's say, oh, sorry, by an older date. So then I have here some content also. Then Notizbuch, that's a sort of wiki pages. And Dateien, that's files. So all the files of the group land in this, on this page. And certainly as a group member, I can also add new content, new projects, new blog posts, and so on. And a member, so as you saw, as a non-member of this platform, you can see any content. And also as a member of other groups, I can see the content. I can also only see the content of these two groups. And this worked very well, and it was built a bit after the model, maybe some of you know it, of OpenAtrium, but it's totally custom. So because these distributions are very problematic, and it wasn't so hard to build it. So I agree that organic groups has its quirky architecture and so on. But at the end, it was quite simple to build that platform.
So something you're showing here or alluding to, which might be important to highlight, is that organic groups works with different types of entities, right? Not just nodes. So you can assign files or custom entities to different groups as well, right?
Yes, I think, but I worked only with nodes, so with content types, because I think it's, I know the, in theory, using different entities is more clean, but I like to use nodes more. It's more simple, and they bring a lot with it, and so you can have a node type with a file field, for example. Or even, I think here are all the files from different content types are just collected on that page. So,
Sure. Well, I probably am unlikely to use other entities as well, but I noticed today in my experimenting with it that you could configure it for other entities, and just found that interesting.
Yeah,
there's something that else was occurring to me as you were talking, Olaf, is the use cases, and I think you've kind of demonstrated them. I think the most obvious use case for organic groups, right, is you have different groups that you want to have make content visible to different groups, right? So you have 4 committees, and each committee, the content is only available to members of that committee. But I think another maybe less obvious, but really common use case might be maybe all the content is visible to everybody, but you want different editor groups, right? So you want one group of people that can edit, one type of content, and another group that can edit a different type of content. Then you can create editor groups and give them permission to only edit the content that they have access to.
I think a similar use case, we have a similar use case on the translation side, the localized side of for Backdrop, where the different groups have or where the groups have different roles, like group administrator, and then I think one other was translation supervisor, and third maybe just group member. And so and then you can assign, or they are assigned different permissions to the to these roles. And so, for example, translation supervisor is able to translate language strings right away without need of moderation or something. And a group member could only make a suggestion of a translation.
Right. Good.
I think I can stop my sharing. Yeah.
Olaf, thank you. This is a great presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other?
I don't
Anyone
want to
else?
hijack. I don't want to hijack this discussion, but you often hear people talking about how organic groups is weird, and that's where a lot of people have kind of gravitated towards the groups module. And I have written a few things on the Drupal.org site. Maybe what I'll do is dig those out and add them to the backdrop thing, because I think there is that sense that groups is a simple approach to groups in general, but I think it misses some of the flexibility that organic groups provides. And I don't know if anyone has comments along that line.
Go ahead, Olaf.
Yeah, just one comment. So I never worked with the group module. All the time I found it very interesting. But yeah, I followed it. So reading posts about it and so on. And I think there is also a port for Backdrop of the group module, but it's, I think, not in a good state. So it's very basic and maybe doesn't work really. And unfortunately, the Drupal 7 version, if I recall correct, isn't anymore supported by the maintainer. And so not only that all the development goes in the Drupal 8, 9, 10 version, but also it sounds like, yeah, it's the Drupal 7 version never really was finished in a way, like the organic groups. Organic groups had 2 branches, and the second branch is really, it is quirky in a way, but it's, on the other hand, it works really well. So I think for Backdrop, if nobody works on the group module, you can decide between the 2 of them.
It's, I think, a similar situation to UberCart and the commerce module, right? Is that both the commerce module tried to make a more entity specific, more modern entity architecture for commerce than UberCart, which was had been developed before entities were in Drupal core. And I think the same thing is true of organic groups and the groups module, right? Is that the groups module tried to make better use of the new entity system and had those advantages. I know I spent most of my time experimenting with the groups module in Drupal 7, just because I heard it was more modern and never really played with organic groups much, but now in the Backdrop space, I don't have that choice. And I'm finding that the organic groups does everything I needed to do, so I'm happy with it. Please don't worry about hijacking the meeting, Izzy. That's why we're here. If you have and if you want to steer us in a, if you're new to Backdrop and you have other tangential questions, feel free.
Thanks.
Yeah, I wanted to second what Tim is saying. So Izzy, it's important for people who are beginning to work in the Backdrop community, similarly to what was happening in Drupal 5, 6, when we were joining. Like, there's lots of people who were joining and were not sure. So asking any questions related to, I have this problem that I'm trying to solve, how do you do this? This is what my site is doing. This is what I need. It's very helpful for everyone. It's helpful for you because you can get answers that will help you instantly, but it also helps maintainers to understand what are the needs of people who are using Backdrop. So, hi Jack, go for it.
There is one other point I'll make right now, and that is that, it's Backdrop in general allows the individual to either choose whether or not they allow information to be gathered about the usage of modules. And I can see that from a privacy point of view, but I think it may result in an underrepresentation of the actual use of these modules. Because, you look at some modules like organic groups, it's got low numbers, which could just be the adoption rate. But I don't know if there's a way for Backdrop to somehow reconcile being able to see how much people are using modules without treading on people's sense of privacy. I kind of noticed that.
Well, that is a big complicated discussion, which we won't go too far down, but we've certainly talked about that and are aware of that. I mean, I think I'm not that surprised that organic groups numbers are fairly low, just in that it's not been out that long, in a stable release, I think. And it's a pretty big module, right? So if you're building a site with it, it doesn't happen overnight. So I expect it will continue to grow. I mean, I don't know how widespread organic groups was in the 777 world. Anybody know? Were there hundreds of thousands or just tens of thousands of sites? But it doesn't matter.
I think tens of thousands, but I'm not sure.
Sure.
On the other side, on the other hand, I think it's very important for people coming from Drupal 7, so they can upgrade their site.
Yeah.
And I also myself, even if I think it's a nice module in a way, I'm not sure if I would build new sites with it, because not because of this specific module, but because it's maybe comparable with the forum module or building a custom forum. It's not that modern, so and people nowadays use other tools to communicate, or they have at least more options than before. So all these services and live chats and so on, and that's hard to build with such a CMS system. So take, for example, a live chat. You hit and enter, and it's there, and people respond immediately and so on. And that's the way how people communicate nowadays. And so I think the usage, if you build something like that, you can't be sure that the people really use it, because they're not used anymore to these kind of platforms.
Sure. I think you're just addressing really a demand question, right? And that 10 years ago, that the idea of these kind of membership group sites were much more common, and Drupal was a really powerful tool for that. And today, there seems to be less demand for that. A lot of that is, I think, I've still run into some, there are still some use cases, but I definitely hear you. Like a lot of groups would just move this kind of group activity to Facebook or something, right? And set up a Facebook group or something.
Yeah, I guess if people are going to use a SaaS environment, they could. But there's a lot of things you can use organic groups for. I mean, one of the things that we found very helpful was you can use it both for an intranet as well as for an external or extranet, and so and another capacity which was built with a combination with taxonomy access was to actually have, I guess an analogy would be desks. So you might have people that are in different groups, but they also have different kind of roles. So people that might be manager or someone else who might be a technician or someone else who might be a writer. And some of the tips and onboarding ideas that you might have might apply across from one department to another, which would be one group to another, but apply more so to people who are in a particular role. And so, you know, with organic groups and the combination, we were able to sort of reuse useful pieces of content without having to recreate them over and over again. And I think that kind of thing in your own system has a lot of advantage, but may be overlooked because a lot of people look at websites now as some simple sites that are really kind of like for their photographs and so on. Coming back to another usability aspect, with organic groups, it seems like we needed to use PHP embeds to try and create some of the functionality. And a lot of people, you know, it's always been a caution, don't write your own PHP into this block or something because it's not secure. But, you know, I mean, if you wanted to do things like be able to identify visibly, display that this post is public, just because of how it looks to have those kind of displays. With Backdrop, does one tend to have the same issue? Don't embed PHP, but you may have to do it.
So what was the module, PHP block or PHP whatever it was, the Drupal 7 module. There was some resistance to even porting that module to Backdrop because of the security issues are sort of inherent, right? That having the ability to insert PHP through the UI is sort of inherently a bit dangerous. I actually, because people kept asking about it, I've never used the block on the live site, but I did port the module and it's available in GitHub. We did not, however, create a release for it because we don't want to make it easy to use. We don't want people to, so you won't find it in the project browser on your site, but if you really want that module and you want to take responsibility for it, there is a port on GitHub. I think the overall thinking about the PHP code module is that oftentimes, I think people who use it maybe don't fully understand that they could get the same thing using views, or certainly the better way would be to write a simple custom module, right? So that you have the PHP code in the backend and not in the UI. So those are better approaches, I think. I've never felt the need to use PHP in the UI with Backdrop because we know alternative ways of getting those things done. I think the main reason for that module was that you had site builders who knew a little bit of PHP, but didn't trust themselves to build a module. So they would just drop some PHP into a block or something. And, it made things possible without having to learn how to create a contrib module or to create your own custom module. But that's definitely the preferred way to do it. So, anything else? We've got just under 10 minutes left in our time slot here. What we could do, well, thanks everybody for talking about organic groups. We have a few minutes to talk about mention a couple of other things. First of all, because we have Izzy here, who's fairly new. Izzy, we do, just so you could you tell us how you heard about today's discussion?
You asking me for that?
Yeah. Where did you hear about today's discussion?
I heard about it primarily from Irina Zach's comments in our Slack group.
Okay.
And I had been browsing around a little bit on the Backdrop CMS site at the events. I don't know. It definitely needs a bit of improvement on that end of it. Maybe I can offer some more direct comments in that area. it kind of, it left me wondering, are these events really happening or not? And one of the simple things was that when you see an event, you see the title of the event and you see the link to the Zoom meeting. And of course, if you go to the Zoom meeting a month ahead of time, there's not a whole lot going on. But I didn't realize, I maybe should have, that clicking on the title, like any other node, would take me to the details. But it didn't have like a README. So a little bit of improvement on that side of it, I think, will go a long way to helping people understand what status, and of course there's a lot more detail of what this the event's about. So it's not a big deal, but it could definitely be improved there.
Well, we've been talking about how to improve those listings, so we appreciate your feedback.
Mhm.
Anyway, so actually, it's a great point. We had 3 topics lined up, and this was the last one. So we before we leave today, we should at least get one more topic in 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, we're doing these sort of user group meetings. Otherwise, on the alternate weeks, we have a UX design meeting where we're actually talking about internally how to improve the UX of Backdrop. And that's more of a working meeting if you're interested in getting involved in that. And then every week, right after this meeting, we have the main developer meeting for Backdrop Core. And anybody is welcome to come to those meetings, but they primarily focus on making Backdrop Core better. And if you're interested in poking your head into those meetings, you're always welcome. The other big thing we should mention is we have you been to Backdrop Live before, Izzy? No?
No, I haven't.
Backdrop Live is our, we were doing it 3 times a year. We've scaled it back to 2 times a year. It's an online, like a day-and-a-half event that basically an online mini conference. Anybody can suggest a topic, and we have discussions on, whatever people want to talk about, including some basic intro stuff on, how to use layouts and Backdrop. But we use an unconference model, so you can, if you're working on an organic groups site and you want to talk about that, you can just put it on the schedule and we'll talk about it and answer questions. And that's happening in about a month. I'll have the dates here in a second. Registration is live. It's we ask for a donation, a recommended donation of $20, but nobody is turned away. Anyways, the dates are the 22nd and 23rd of September for Backdrop Live. Let's talk about future user group topics. Laren, an obvious one would be Jim. Is it ready to even do a preliminary demo? And I know you may not be. Okay, Laren would like to wait and do that. I think Laren's not able to talk to us, but in chat he said he's hoping to do something in Backdrop Live, which is only a month away, so that would be good. Any other topic ideas for 2 weeks from now? Zippy CRM. So Laren suggested Zippy CRM. I think we already did. So we've been doing these community meetings for about 4 or 5 months now. And I believe we did one on City CRM. That's not to say we couldn't do another one. Especially if somebody had something particular to talk about. Does anybody else remember for sure? Did we do? So Izzy, a lot of the sessions at Backdrop Live are not recorded. And one of the nice things about these meetings that we're in right now is that they are recorded. So we're trying to think of things that would, it would be helpful to have a recording about. We have a conflict with Vancouver WordCamp. That's unfortunate. So, yeah, well, those things happen.
Yeah.
Maybe next time. Maybe next time.
Right. Just on the one day. So the
Sure.
important stuff can be on the 22nd.
Is there if a user group topic that I don't know how far you've dabbled with Backdrop yet, but is there something that you'd really like to see this kind of discussion about?
Well, I think you may have hit it on other times. I think that the other area that's interesting me is using Bootstrap with Backdrop.
Right.
We did have this topic once, but I think it's good to repeat good things. I am very I'm using Bootstrap Lite 5 with most recent versions of Backdrop, and it works very well. It's very flexible. And if that is of interest, we can see if that should be a presentation.
I don't think we've done. I don't think we've done it at our user group meeting, so it may not be recorded, Irina.
Right.
So
When I looked at Bootstrap Lite, I mean, one of the challenges there is it doesn't seem to have the SCSS files with it. And so, you know, all that flexibility you have of being able to use that is gone. But maybe I don't understand how better to use the child themes and staying with the default. But I should let this meeting roll over to your other commitments.
That's true. It's a good suggestion. I think. Go ahead.
Kim, I'm gonna get out because it's 2:00. I have to deal with some other things, but thank you. Izzy, it's great to see you. You can now spread the Backdrop word in Vancouver, wherever. I'm sure there are lots of people who benefit. And Team Erickson, I'll see you soon. But thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Izzy, but we'll wrap this up. I'll just mention before you leave that Martin, I think both Martin and Robert, who were in our meeting today, have done work on the Bootstrap Lite modules.
Okay.
Or the Bootstrap mod or themes for Backdrop. And I don't think we've done a user group meeting on that, so that might be a good topic. I'll talk to them and see if they're willing to help,
Excellent.
Demonstrate. The other thing is that these are modules that could be, more work could go into them to make, like, for example, adding a SAS. There really aren't many options for themes that have sort of SAS frameworks built into them. My own team, we have added our own SAS to themes, but we, I think it would be nice to have a number of the really active Drupal or Backdrop themers prefer not to use SAS.
Right.
But I know there's still a lot of people who do like to use it, and it would be nice to have some more options for themes, that sort of starter themes with a SAS built in. We'll talk more about that.